The falling leaves drift by my window, those autumn leaves of red and gold. I see your lips full of summer kisses and those sunburned hands I used to hold. Then you went away, the days grew long, and soon I'll hear old winter song. But I miss you most of all, my darling, when those autumn leaves start to fall.
Single Family Design Board, November 11th, 2019. Can we have roll call, please?
Thank you. Vice Chair Miller. Or Chair Miller. Board Member James.
Here.
Board Member Farrell.
Here.
Board Member Ziegler.
Here.
Board Member Motisha.
Here.
Board Member Richards. Here. And Chair Sweeney is absent.
Thank you. I'd like to open up the floor. Any member of the public may address the board for up to 2 minutes on any subject within the jurisdiction that is not scheduled on this agenda for a public discussion. Seeing no one come forward, I will close the public discussion, and we'll go to approval of the minutes of the Single Family Design Board meeting of October 28th. Do I have a motion?
I make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, let's go through the items. We have 1103 Harbor Hills Drive, 1803 Robbins Street, 2327 Edgewater Way. Item 4, 3139 Seacliff. Item 5, 1426 Mountain View Road. Item 6, 1142 Harbor Hills Drive. 1207 Biscayne Road. Item 8, 1199 Harbor Hills Drive. Seeing no comments, pass the motion. All those say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, okay. So approval for the consent calendar for November 4th.
I'll make that motion.
I'll have a second.
Aye, second.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chair Miller. The consent calendar for November 4th is as follows. Item A, 2820 Clinton Terrace. This project received final approval as submitted. Item B, 1646 Franceschi Road. This project received approval of review after final as submitted. Item C, 1338 De La Guerra Road. This project was postponed indefinitely at the applicant's request. Items A through C were reviewed by Vice Chair Miller and Board Member Richards.
Thank you, Erica. Go through November 11th.
We got to vote on it.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? Thank you.
Keep him honest, keep you honest.
Yeah, keep me honest. November 11th?
I make that
you.
motion.
Oh, yeah, do I have a motion?
I make that motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Okay, and the consent calendar for November 11th is as follows. Item A, 871 Deer Path Road. This project received project design and final approval with neighborhood preservation, hillside design, and slope lot findings met. Item B, 385 Loma Media Road. This project was continued 2 weeks to the full board with comments. Item C, 84 La Vista Grande. This project received final approval as submitted. Item A was reviewed by Vice Chair Miller, and items B through C were reviewed by Vice Chair Miller and Board Member Richards.
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment regarding item B. I moved it to the full board because it was a house up on the Riviera where they're changing the back railing to a cable rail, and I wasn't comfortable making a unilateral design decision, so I wanted the full board to review it because the front of the house has wrought iron and they're using cable rail in the back. So I thought the full board should review it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Erica. Item D, announcements. Request by applicant for any future changes we have on the agenda or appeals. Any announcements?
No announcements. Did we
need to
make
vote.
a motion to approve the consent calendar?
We made a motion, we didn't.
Did
we
we
vote?
do an-
Okay, all those in favor,
Aye.
say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain? Okay, thank you.
And I have no announcements.
Okay. Do we have any subcommittee reports? I know Lisa and I met for the award meeting, and we kind of clarified what we need to do, and we kind of made an action item in terms of what we need to do to get that going forward, in particular the plaques, how we're going to design them, and they're developing a budget for that. Can you think of anything else that we should say about that?
We were just currently getting pricing on the bronze plaque and deciding not much to add other than we're getting pricing and that our design will probably be similar to that of ABR and HLC.
All right, thank you. Are there any other reports? Seeing none, we'll move forward. So our first item is 1553 Shoreline Drive. If you are here, could you please come forward? And before you begin, I'd like to have Robert go over the minutes.
Sure. Vice Chair Miller, members of the board, I'll give you a little recap. I'm Robert Dostalek, Associate Planner with Community Development and Project Manager for this project. And I'll give you a little overview of what happened last time and what happened since that last
great.
meeting. You may recall this project was last seen on October 5th of this year. And at that time, staff had brought to the attention of the SFDB of visual resource policies that were coming about as part of the city's new coastal land use plan. Namely, specifically as they related to a view corridor and a visual evaluation that may apply to the project. And since that time, at the request of the applicant, the project was brought before the Planning Commission to get a little more detailed read on these policy issues as it relates to the project. And so on October 3rd at their meeting, at the PC hearing, the PC determined that this site does not constitute a view corridor. So
Okay.
the SFDB doesn't have to concern themselves with that policy matter. And also at that time, they provided some guidance on some of the design alternatives that they presented to the PC at that time. So the applicant is now returning to the SFDB with a revised design that responds to some of the PC comments. So in other words, the policy issues that were brought to the attention to the SFDB last time were all addressed by the Planning Commission. So those can be put aside,
Okay.
and the Planning Commission can focus on their usual task of looking at a project as it relates to size, bulk, scale, neighborhood compatibility, et cetera. But I did want to point out a couple of things that the project did respond to, specific remarks from the Planning Commission, and the project has been revised in that manner, and the applicant, I'm sure, will touch on those as well. But they're outlined in the memo if you've had the opportunity to examine. But basically, they
Is this the memo?
it.
That's that Robert has?
There's a memo that was in the past.
Oh, okay. Is it this? Okay, sorry.
So I can just touch on these, that the garage footprint of the current plan provides 2 additional feet of interior setback from the western property boundary compared to the plan presented to the board on August 5th. So an 8-foot setback versus a 6-foot setback. And then at its closest point on the eastern property boundary, the residence footprint of the current plan provides 6 additional feet of interior setback from the eastern property boundary compared to the August 5th. So 12 feet versus 6 feet. And it's also noted that the floor area of the first floor has been reduced by approximately 264 square feet. And so the applicant is coming forth today and presenting some of these comments or some of these design changes. So what I was just going to conclude with, again, the board can proceed looking at the project in their usual manner, just being mindful that some of these revisions were prompted by PC comment as it relates to these increased setbacks.
Okay.
And that's all for staff's presentation. If you have any comments, I'll be here.
Okay, thank you. So, Robert, do we have minutes? See how
Are these
they-
still applicable to the
Yeah,
project since
they're
it
not.
sounds like it's
What's it?
changed?
Okay, in that case, why don't you go through your project and show us what's going on?
Yes, my name's Tom Oxner, project architect.
Yes, introduce yourself.
I'm here with,
Kim True from True Nature Landscape Architecture.
And Trish Allen with Suzanne Elledge Planning and Permitting.
Okay.
so, yes, as our planner stated, that's exactly the way I recounted it. Basically, there were 2 points really at the planning commission hearing. One was to make that determination of whether there was a view finding that needed to be made, which was not.
Oh, you're not on, there you go.
Which was found not to apply, but it also offered an opportunity for the Planning Commission to comment on the architecture and its compatibility. They ultimately will be making the decision, but of course your board will be sending along comments as you see fit. So what I'd like to do here is just to pull up the project that we saw last time, and I have it kind of red marked so you can kind of see, and I'll go through the comments that were made specifically by the Planning Commission and how we responded to them. So this was the previous set of drawings that you saw, and really the only thing I'm going to go to here is the site plan here. So basically, at the meeting, the Planning Commission, as they were reviewing the value of the potential of a view corridor through the site, they did understand and like the fact that a narrower building can actually help that location. You can actually, even though it's not required, the ability to kind of free up space and increase the setbacks on both the west side and the east side has value. The house already was presented to them at a much less than 85% FAR. I believe it was 71% at that meeting. Fortunately, when we brought these comments back to our client, he was very open-minded and said, you know, if that's what they feel is better for the site, we're going to do it. So we've reduced the size of the house. The Planning Commission also asked that if we do reduce the width of the building, that we don't increase the bulk of the second floor. So we did not. The square footage of the second floor remains the same, did not change. The other comments, I think, that were significant from their perspective was they did appreciate the small size of the house and the low profile. So they asked that the height of the house, which the two-story element is about 20 feet and the one-story element is about 12 feet, is good, and that the architectural style they felt was acceptable for the neighborhood. And in addition, because it represents a low profile, they seemed to be generally in favor of it. So these are the plans here, and really the architecture is very similar. It's been shortened. This was the previous building here, and the proposed building here. So you can see really what's occurred is the living room area has been brought in, and the massing on the second story has not changed. The garage has been pulled in, and then we've got 12-foot setback now on that east side. I've got a photo sim with the landscaping plan in front of this building so you can get an idea of what the landscape's going to do. We put most of what you're going to see here that's new has to do with the landscape planning. Kim will go over that. So as far as the site plan, the similarities are much the same. We've got a 12-foot setback here. The idea here is to kind of the sensitivities, as I understood from this board, and I understand those and I explained those originally to the client, was he really wants to feel like the living space here is in a botanical park with landscape all around it. And the challenge we have on that is to provide significant amount of landscape screening so it protects the public from too much light that can spread out. So this plan just shows diagrammatically the area where the screening will occur, and Kim will get into that in detail. As far as the FAR goes, the house has now been reduced down to, let me pull up, we're at 66% of the FAR. And that's based on the entire site. This lot is 22,000 square feet?
23,333.
23. So just to, I just want to understand.
So let me stop you real quick.
Absolutely.
So I'm a little concerned here. We asked you to review alternative contemporary approaches using elements of pitched roofs and mimic the nature of the neighborhood. And, okay. Keep going. I'll wait till comment.
Yes, okay. Okay, no, and I understand that. I mean, this is one of these projects with a coastal development permit that goes back and forth. You know, I'm still responsible to my client who has a particular want.
Yeah.
And, yeah, so, I mean.
Got it.
Yeah. So with regard to the FAR, just to make a point, if we look at just the buildable area on this site, the FAR of the house is, here we go, that's what I was looking for. So from the edge of the bluff to the front of the street, that's 16,000 square feet. So this house would still be only 71% of the FAR. Now, if we look at the house from the buildable area right there, just this area, if we were to evaluate the size of this house on just that area, this would be a 10,500 square foot lot, and it would only be 82% of the FAR. So this is a very, very small house on this property, and the size of the house and the height of the house is something that is significantly less than what you might expect for someone who's purchasing a lot like this, and I think that might play into some of the desires that the client actually wants to get out of the property. But so moving along to the house, I'm just going to work through. So what the floor plan is so the house was out here, it was brought in. Yes, he would love to have glass around here and have it feel like it's in a garden. The 3-car garage is included in the FAR, so that just underscores how small the house itself is. There is a covered terrace on the back side here. There will be a small basement for the pool equipment to be in, so it won't be above grade. It'll further reduce the built environment on the site. The second story is really the same as it was. It has 2 bedrooms, both with ocean views on the westerly side of the property. The roof plan, 20-foot high 2-story mast, 12-foot high 1-story mast, 10-foot high garage. These are the elevations. No glass guardrails. The glass from the actual south side are tucked well back within these deep overhangs, and the building itself now, because of the bluff top setbacks that we are required to achieve, is pulled so far back from the edge that I think it represents a very, very small possibility of any glare from the water, and you can't see it from the beach. So having said those, that, I'd like to turn it over to Kim and kind of go through our landscape design. Oh, one last thing I forgot, and I'm going to, well, you know what, I'm going to pull up the photo sim from the street after you show them the landscape.
Oh, okay.
I think that would be better. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, this is our first pass at the conceptual landscape plan for the property. And thank you so much, dear. On the front part, there's an existing podocarpus tree that's to remain, and there's an existing coral tree to remain there. And we did have an arborist look at this, and there's been some discussion, and we think we can keep the tree there, and we'd like to just prune up a branch, and that was a recommendation of the city tree committee and the arborist. So this tree can stay, which will help with some of our screening from the road coming down. Proposing some flowering canopy trees around the edge of the property, and this one will help soften the views of the house from the street, and then also provide privacy from the second story, the master bedroom windows that are up top. And then we have this tree here kind of buffering and softening this view here. And then between the two houses, we have our wall here and the kitchen and the loggia here. And this is a 1-story house here. So this just gives them a little bit of privacy between the two. Proposing a hedge out front. It could be a very loose hedge, looking at some of the leucadendrons and possibly grevillea. So we have a nice flowery, textured interest, really going for a tropical look here, and trying to pull it off with more of our water-conserving plants. So trying to bring in some more of the Australian natives in front. Some of the taller palm trees, vertical elements, to help with that massing of the house here. So as we scoop up to the second floor, we are kind of bringing those palm trees up and then softening here. All around the front of the glass here, proposing a ring of a tropical accent plant, something like a giant bird of paradise, or the encente, which is a ornamental banana. So we get this nice, big, bold, tropical foliage look that really provides a screen and is also going to provide privacy from in the residence and give you that botanical garden look, so that you're looking out into this beautiful tropical jungle around the house. And this is where part of the layering and our stormwater strategy comes in. couple of these raised 42-inch high stormwater planters along the front that would pull, the design would pull off of the architecture. So we'd have some strap leaf plants in the front of that, probably some bromeliads with some contrasting color to play off of the green backdrop, and then a number of rain chains coming from that beautiful roof straight down in, so the copper rain chains. So we'd get that light and that play off the water hitting these raised planters. So all working together for that screening. And then a row of the Mexican pebbles or a glass pebbles around the outside. So it really creating a really nice contemporary design from the inside and from the outside. Trying to pull in some of our, like what you normally see is these bold tropical plants, playing with some of the larger green aloes and some of our agaves, so that we really get that color year-round opportunity for flower, the orange, the punch in the landscape, bringing that in around the front. Part of the idea in the back is we want to keep this open so that you can see the islands and really appreciate that view. So pulling in some of our palm trees from the front, bringing that to the back, staying with some of our low tropical plants, some of the low ground cover bougainvillea for that splash of color, more of the agaves and the aloes, and then a series of, this is our bluff setback, basically right about here, and quickly before I go off into the bluff, the idea is we'll be taking any of the stormwater from the developed part of the house, going into these stormwater planters, strip drains here, pulling that all out to the permeable paver driveway in the front, and we have a cistern out front in the driveway, so we're not impacting the coastal bluff with any of the water from the development. As we move out into this area, we're proposing a number of very simple, soft on the land types of landscape elements that are consistent with the coastal bluff setback policies. So we're more than 10 feet away from our face of bluff with a small yoga deck out here. So this would be 10 feet off the ground, a very nice place to come out, contemplate, do morning yoga, some native flowering plants around the edge, and then a series of native ground covers, so very low water use, very simple and compatible with the native environment. And then we have a small patio out here that would be a gravel connected with gravel pathways with a portable patio, a portable propane tank type fire pit and seating. So there's a nice place to come out, different series of spaces to come out and enjoy the view, and a small piece of art sculpture here. So what we're really trying to do is to keep these views open through here and here by using these plants as we're playing with the topography, so that you'll just see the flowering parts of the aloes and some of the tops of those plants, but that view, and you'd have the peekaboo views as you're walking by. And that's our landscape design.
Thank you.
You're going to show one more thing?
So what we've got is, I've taken the best that I can, and just to kind of give, and we've left some trees and so forth out, but the purpose of this is to really illustrate the effectiveness of how the landscape will really screen this house. And the intent is really for the general public not to really know it's there. Of course, the garage doors will be visible from above the hedge, but we can work with those garage doors and get them to be something that would be satisfactory. As far as the design goes, the Planning Commission made no comments that the architecture was not appropriate for this. In fact, two of them made comments that they thought the architecture was appropriate for shoreline. When a house, most of them did mention the appreciation for the low height, and that is indicative of the architectural style itself. To try to create a hybrid of pitched roofs and flat roofs on a small structure and keep the flat roof to the tallest structure would be difficult. I can try it, but it's not what the client wants, and it didn't seem like it was made the radar of the Planning Commission. But of course, we are here to make comments, to respond to comments from everybody.
Sorry.
And I think, is there anything, Trish, you want to say?
Well, I guess just queuing off of that, is sort of almost feels like our first concept review, because the first one we had with this board, we were talking about brand new policies. We were all pretty much on a steep learning curve with that. And we worked closely with staff and asked, to go to the Planning Commission to get some clarification on that. So this project will require a coastal development permit to be considered by the Planning Commission. And so we're looking, for those types of comments from this board to move us along through the process. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And that's our presentation.
All right, thank you. Do we have any comments or neighborhood?
No.
No phone calls or emails? Okay. No one from the public to speak. I'll bring it to the board. Does the board have any questions?
What was our,
I have questions.
yeah, I have a question. What was our comments about the design last meeting on August the 5th?
Yeah, let me, I'm a little concerned we bypassed it. I think it's kind of important that we make clear. It was, the board defines the neighborhood as Shoreline Drive between the edge of Washington School and the edge of Shoreline Park and along the bluff and up to Santa Rosa Avenue. To the purpose of this study, consider any view corridors, which you've done. Let's see. Item number 2, review alternative contemporary approaches using elements of pitched roofs that mimic the nature of the neighborhood. So that was one of the comments we had. And 4A, a site study that would place building footprint and geometry, size, bulk, and scale on one half side of the site running east-west. I think that was Fred's suggestion. In addition, study could be made of a series of pavilions that alternate from the north-south boundaries of the site as defined on sheet AS1 that would still allow for a direct view corridor for pedestrians using either side of the Shoreline Drive, which is what you addressed, right? Did you?
Well, okay, so our understanding of that is that a lot of the comments that were made there were focused on the
Applying
early
that policy.
information to you that you might need to consider this as sensitive to a view corridor. And that's why the first meeting went a little sideways, because if we had known that the Planning Commission was going to say that, hey, there's no view finding to be made, it would have changed the complexion, I think, of that first meeting. So it's difficult to extract which comments there were actually related to, and I think most of the meeting was about trying to find ways to address a view corridor, when now we're back to you with that the view corridor is not an issue. So it's
According to the Planning Commission.
according to the Planning Commission.
Did they
Hold on. Let me stick to questions.
Did they
with them.
come to that conclusion after you showed them this new plan, or before? Like, if it's not a question, why did you make the?
Well,
the side-
I'm sorry.
why did you
May
draw-
I answer the question?
Yes.
Or would you prefer to hear from staff? Robert's clicking his.
Why did you
mic.
draw the sides of the house in if the view corridor wasn't in question?
I can answer that.
Yeah, we can answer that.
Because it happened to meet the program of the client. The client felt that this was one thing he didn't want to push back on. He would rather keep his architectural style and push back on the size of the house than he would on the size, he understands there are concessions.
Get a glass of water. Anyone else?
Because the view corridor has never bothered me. So you come down that street and you can look some, but
Well, from our perspective, we wanted clarification as part of the Planning Commission's purview. And granted, there's some overlap between this board and what the Planning Commission looks at. They look for neighborhood compatibility as well. But we have a brand new coastal land use policy guideline that we're grappling with. At the time, I think it was just about to get certified that week. And so staff had directed this board to consider several coastal policies, one of which said this site provides a view corridor. So we talked to staff quite a bit after that hearing and decided It's one of the findings that the Planning Commission needs to make. They look at all the applicable coastal policies as part of the coastal development permit approval that they're considering. And so we felt it was, and staff agreed, that it was appropriate to go to that commission and get clarification on a variety of these policies. And the primary one from our standpoint is, does this site constitute a view corridor? And so the direction from the commission was not. However, we still want to be sensitive to the site, to the neighborhood, to views. Shoreline Drive is a scenic corridor. So we felt, and as Tom mentioned, the client was like, look, let's provide some added setbacks so there's still some openness, if you will, on the sides of the houses. A lot of the comments on August 5th from this board were focused on how to show alternatives and preserve views. So, like I said, I almost feel like we're kind of coming back here almost as an initial concept review with you.
I brought those studies. I have them here if you'd like to see them, but again, they don't mean anything because they were addressing a policy that's not in play.
They're going to tell you
Where
to talk into the mic.
I have forgotten. Is the house to the east? Is it a more contemporary house? Is it a flat roofed house?
It is. And
Is
I-
it
I thought
this?
so.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
Okay. I remember Fred bringing that. I was almost at the end of the meeting. He brought that up about pitched roofs, and he pushed to that size, bulk, and scale of your proposal. And I didn't say anything, but I questioned it. Why when? Oh, I'll save my comments for later.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Anyone else have any questions?
I do, but they're inconsequential compared to what we've discussed. First of all, you said something, and I don't know if I heard you correctly, about a yoga deck in the back. You said the number I heard was 10 feet. Is that square or height?
So the new coastal policy is that you need to be 10 feet back from the bluff, and I was saying that we're well far away from that 10
I thought you
feet.
remember 10 feet high, and I didn't
No,
understand that.
and the other part of the policy is that it needs to be 10 inches off the ground, so it would go on those little piers that you sit down. So it's a very temporary type thing.
You've answered. Okay, thank you. I told you it was inconsequential. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyone else have any questions? Okay, we'll come to comments. Who has comments?
Yeah, I'll make a comment.
Well, Joe.
Sorry, you're first.
We raise our hand, we get called.
Yeah,
I'm looking at you. I'm not looking at her.
Go in alphabetical order.
you have a comment.
I have a comment.
Yes.
I think that I would find this iteration of the project supportable. The fact that the owner's been sensitive to the placement of the building on the site and has been willing to do that. And along with the landscape screening, we have approved other modern projects on that street, so I find the project supportable.
Thank you. Jen?
So my comment was also about the landscape plan. I think it's lovely, and I think all the screening is really going to help, especially because I was worried about that large glass room and people just, you're getting your coffee in the morning, people just looking right in. And I think all the screening it's going to be lovely. And I also I'm very pleased with, your keeping your Tier 3 water runoff off the bluffs and keeping all the water into the front towards that cistern and the permeable driveway. I think that's a very positive step. So I'm in support of it.
Anyone else?
I like
Joe.
I like the contemporary. I think, except for about 6 houses right there that are just west of there, which are typical Santa Barbara Spanish, or tried to. Every other house in the whole street, shoreline from the La Marina, is it La Marina, all the way up to the coastal or the Coast Guard or the park. They're all different. There's not one the same. There's modern, there's old, there's new. There's some houses have been there for 80, 70 years, and they're all different. And I like this style right there. And I drive by there and I miss the lot. I miss the vacant lot as it is anyway. You know, having it full of vegetation would be great. Yeah, I like it. I think the size and the contemporary style fits the neighborhood and our guidelines.
I'm just supporting my colleagues. I think it's fantastic. In fact, I'd like to be invited to the housewarming party because it looks like it's going to
You never do. They never happen. I've yet anyway. Do you have anything to say, Robert?
Sure. Yeah, I agree with the other comments. I think the landscape plan is really impressive. I love the way you render it. I think you've got a great choice of plants that I can see kind of creating this tropical botanic garden as you described. And I think it will be well screened. So I agree. I think it's a neat project, and I think it fits into the context of the neighborhood there. So I'm in support of it.
Okay. So I've got to compartmentalize my comments here. So the first one is, I understand as a client-architect relationship that it's important for you to satisfy your clients' wants, needs, and desires. So you're under a lot of pressure to have that, satisfy your client. I was bothered by you coming here and telling us that the Planning Commission said this and this and this as if they outrank us and as if somehow they are more important than we are in terms of our decisions. And I felt kind of like you sort of ignored what we were asking for because the Planning Commission said this, so since they said that, this is what we're going to do. And that got me all kind of bothered. And then I started looking at the neighborhood, and you have this house here, which is this flat roof contemporary house right next door. And then you have a series of these tile roof homes next door. So the other important thing, and the whole purpose of the Single Family Design Board that I was thinking we were created, was back in, the late 90s when some client built this gigantic Victorian home in the Mesa, and the whole neighborhood went berserk, and we were born from that whole debacle. And I know Joe mentioned there's a lot of different styled homes on the neighborhood, but a lot of them were probably built before there was any design review, and that's why a lot of people call it, what is that word? Eclectic. I call it mishmash. It's not necessarily attractive, but it's a mishmash of different buildings. So that our board, our purview, or not our purview, but our mission is to sort of make it harmonious so that it kind of seems like a pleasant experience when you go in the neighborhood, so it doesn't feel like all these buildings are fighting from heights, bulk, and scale. I know I'm going on and on, but I'm trying to, I just find it kind of bothersome that you've ignored what we said. However, I think based on the landscaping and your sensitivity to it and the fact that there's this house next door, and none of these structures are what I'd call architecturally,
Not going to win any awards or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm trying to help you think.
But I was saying, do you know what the height of this building is?
Yeah, I do actually. The height of the second floor is 20 feet, and it's the same height as our second floor.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that answers a big question right there. So
I thought that might come up, so
Yeah.
I took the time to measure.
yeah, I appreciate that because this is a beautifully designed home. But what I'm always looking at is, does it fit in with the neighborhood? And that's the only thing. So I'm trying to find pieces of information that can say, oh, okay, I feel comfortable. This fits in the neighborhood. So I said my spiel. So we'll have to see, what are you here for?
Just here for
Just
comments.
concept.
Oh, comments only.
To the Planning Commission. And
Okay.
they are interested in what this board
Yeah.
says and how you review it. And
I just
I
wanna-
understand where you're coming from, but
Yeah.
that was not our intent. It
It
was
was
really
sort of how when you first came
We
here-
were just focused on the
Yeah.
coastal policies and not to
I think there was confusion.
ignore.
There was
a
confusion
lot.
because of that comment about the view corridor and
There was a lot of
yeah.
The
confusion.
problem, and that's why we really pressed to go to the Planning Commission, because we felt like this board
We all
was spending
needed that
time on a
clarification.
policy measure rather than on comments on architecture, and it was so hard for me to understand
Got it.
the difference
You could
between
blame
what I
me.
should
I-
do.
Well, now I understand. It's
Thank you.
clear.
No, but thank you for explaining
Yeah.
your feelings about that. I think
Yeah.
that's important for us to.
Can I make
we
a comment?
appreciate What you
also?
do up here, really.
Sure.
I felt at that meeting, we were broadsided by this new enunciation of the view corridor.
Yes.
And
Now that
so
I
it wasn't
remember.
anything we were taking into our thinking about any project. We just were caught with our pants down on that.
Well,
And so I can
we're
see
all in
why.
there together.
Yeah, right. So that's what I think.
Okay, with that being said, does someone like to make a motion? Yes, with your pants on.
The board would like to give this project positive comments, and we feel that the fact that the garage footprint is 2 feet less into the western property line setback is appreciable, along with the 6 feet of additional distance from the eastern property line boundary, and that the reduction in FAR, 264 square feet, down to 66% is appreciable. That the landscape plan greatly accentuates the appealability of the project, and the screening from the street will be significant. And let's see. Do I need to make NPO findings? Not.
No.
No, just
Okay,
make comments.
and we would like you to return to us at, what,
2 weeks or?
in 2 weeks or indefinitely, your choice?
So this project, the next
Oh, they have to go to-
processing step would be to Planning Commission unless you wanted to see us again. So I was also wondering if it's the board's pleasure to talk about neighborhood compatibility in general. Those are the types of comments that the Planning Commission would be interested to hear from you. Mass bulk and scale neighborhood compatibility. And so it would be an indefinite continuance because we wouldn't be back for,
Whenever.
so I say this out loud, several months.
Okay. I'm sorry, pulling a blank.
The comments on the size, bulk, and scale and
Size, bulk?
appropriateness of the architecture in the neighborhood.
Okay. Size, bulk, and scale is well in keeping with our FAR standards, and we feel, considering the home next door is 20 feet, and the maximum plate height on this project is 20 feet, that the scale is appropriate. We also find that many types of architecture are in the immediate neighborhood as we have defined by Shoreline Drive, Santa Rosa Avenue, and what was the other?
Let's see, we said
Between the edge of Washington.
Shoreline Drive between the edge of Washington School and the edge
Washington
of
School.
Shoreline Park.
And that the Mesa has a variety of architecture and other modern homes near it, and that this fits in well with the
Character of the neighborhood.
character of the Mesa neighborhood.
Okay, that's your motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstain? Did you say aye or?
Aye.
Aye, okay.
Late.
Okay. You got, the motion was passed, unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You were easy on it, Lisa.
I don't know who gets what here.
When this guy Tom Marshall comes in here, I always know it's going to be a good meeting. He is so well prepared. He really knows. Something to us, doesn't he?
Okay, 1207 Biscayne Road. Do you want to come forward, please?
I've got a meeting I have to be at 4:15, so I might just run. If
You're going to
that's
skip
cool.
out? Okay.
That's all right.
Would someone like to sit over here and help me with the minutes?
Yeah, I have
Yeah.
to take off for a meeting this afternoon.
Thank you, Lisa.
Brian, turn her on.
Say what?
Turn her on. Press the
Oh, yeah.
button. That's it.
Hi.
Bye, Robert.
Take care, Robert.
So if you want to read, so Lisa, if you could please read the minutes from our previous meeting.
Sure thing, Mr. Co-Chair. The minutes from the previous meeting on this project are that the motion be continued indefinitely to the full board with a comment that the board does not find acceptable the proposed standing metal seam roof, glass railings, and extended cantilever deck. The board looks forward to another design for this project.
There you go. So if you'd like to introduce yourself and tell us how you address those comments.
Good afternoon. My name is David Farron with Archetype Architects, and I'm here with my client Karen Craig and my associate John Finsky. And we addressed the comments. It's taken us some time, obviously.
Okay, you're speaking in barrel. That helps.
Okay, so the deck is a replacement deck. So there's a deck almost the same size as this one now in this location.
Okay.
We also scaled back the trellis. That wasn't one of the comments, but it went from 423 square feet to 385 square feet. And we are also converting the basement in part to living space. So that's one of the changes. So that's what that door and that window are new. And we changed all of the railings to cable type. And we changed the roofing, which you really can't see on this. We have a color board here that has and the deck cantilever was omitted at this corner.
Hold on a second. What's going on here? This is driving me crazy. Okay, now go ahead.
All right.
You're in
Is that
between,
working?
you're in between two echo chambers.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Sorry about that.
So we can share.
Yodeling.
So the columns used to be back here, and we pulled them out to the corners where we could. We have this really nice oak tree, old growth oak tree, so we're trying to keep the new footings away from it. The old deck is, very old and not very significantly built, and it's falling apart. So our new footings, we know, are going to have to be much more structural than the old ones are, and so we're just trying to keep away from the oak tree. And the configuration of the deck is a little bit different than the original. So you can see sort of a simple shape, and the trellis portion is over the wide part of the deck. We have this, I think last time we didn't have these shade canopies in here. We had a rigid trellis system, so this will be just fabric shades.
Okay.
And here's a better view of what the deck looks like, and here's our nice oak tree that hangs over the deck. It's very tucked in there. There's another big oak tree on the other side and one here, so there's sort of, narrow views out from the decks. That's a very nice feature of this property. And here is the family room, new family room expansion, which just has a door that matches the same door that's upstairs and a window to this space. And a couple of sections showing how things are working. We've made.
Okay, thank you.
Entertain any questions?
Yes. Did we get any comments or public input?
No, we didn't.
Thank you. I'll bring it back to the board for questions. Anyone have any questions? Lisa?
Yes. Are you
I
going
don't,
to be, are you going to be sinking a post near the tree near the deck?
We've kept the post as far away as we can. We could look at the basement plan, and you can see the relationship. So here's the tree, but the post is back just at the edge of the drip line, and this as well. The other the old posts are right next to it, but I don't want to try to get there.
Thank you.
are you the owner too?
No, I'm not. I'm an associate of David's.
Okay, got it.
Archetype Architects.
Okay,
That's my question.
thank you.
I guess I have a question on, oh, I'm happening to, on, what is it, A1? The deck looks like it would not let a lot, well, it would proscribe light coming in from downstairs. Are those rooms going to be too dark? Is that an issue?
Let's see. So you're south facing, so the sun's on this coming.
It's very south and west, so there will be some sun, but it's a pretty shaded area already.
Okay.
I think, given that we're putting in this really bigger door and a big window, that's going to help a lot.
Okay.
That actually is living space. This portion, just the corner, and it has a smaller door and window there that probably are not adequate. So we're trying to solve it with that.
Good question.
Thank you.
I think you addressed all our concerns. Joe, do you have any questions? Or no? Okay, no questions. I'm going to go to comments. Anyone have any comments?
I have one more question.
Sure.
The metal roof tile?
Yes.
Do you have a, okay. You don't have a sample. I'd be interested in a sample next time you
Okay.
come back.
Could I see that color board?
Yeah, I'd like to.
Thank you.
So where are the minutes? Let me read the minutes again. Okay. So this is the replacing of the middle seam roof, right? It's really interesting.
They took off the glass and put cable railing.
Okay. And it's a pretty contemporary kind of house anyway, right? I mean,
It's a mid-century
mid-century track
sort of
kind
ranch.
you know.
Yeah.
And you're over here. Do we have any site photos?
It's kind of hidden right in there. You blink, you miss it.
It's very hidden. It's difficult to even see the house from Viscano Road because the whole front yard is full of oak trees.
So is this the current residence?
That's the current back, yes.
And can I ask a question about the canopy? Is that one of those ones and it's like it can adjust and be solid or then,
That's kind of what we had before, but this one is a fabric canopy, and
Okay.
it runs on cables, and it's retractable.
Oh, okay, it'll slide back and forth. Okay.
Okay. I just have to see let's see the elevation. So this is the academy thing right there?
Yes.
Are we into comments? Do we have any comments? Yes? All right, no one's having any comments. If no one has any comments, if someone would like to entertain a motion, let's see, they're here for design, project, yeah. Neighborhood preservation, hillside design, and slope lots findings are required.
Did this require Tier 3 stormwater management at all?
It does not require that because we've not exceeded the square footage.
Okay.
Does anyone
Thank you.
concern how this is sticking out like this? Is that a issue? Is that what was there before? Is that what you said?
That is how far out
It was,
the
so that
existing deck is.
existing was? So you're giving it seems like a little more of a contemporary feel with the cable railing, right?
Yeah, we're also remodeling the interior. We're vaulting some ceilings. We want to make it more open and update it and more livable.
Cool.
Want to make the deck a more regular shape. Right now, it kind of has its
Zigzags.
sawtooth on the edges and have kind of an outdoor room.
Do we have a landscape plan?
We don't have a landscape plan. The entire site is full of, it's pretty nice landscaping now. It's full of oak trees with shrubs here and there. There's no grass.
So this is,
It's basically an oak canopy, and oak mulch is the landscape.
Here's the street.
okay. Are you doing anything with the garage door? Are you changing the garage door?
We don't have current plans to do that.
Okay. Well, that's, no one has any comments. If someone would like to entertain a motion?
Okay. I'd like to give this project design approval with the following comments that I think your color choice palette is acceptable and it will blend nicely in with the neighborhood. I'm pleased that you're going to retain the existing oak trees and do everything you can to keep them safe when you do the construction of the deck and things like that, because those oak trees are very beautiful up there on that side. I went and looked at it today. I think that the cable railing is a fine alternative to a glass railing, and so I'm in support of that. In general, I think that it is consistent with the neighborhood in size, bulk, and scale, and consistent with the appearance and compatible in size, bulk, and scale. That's what I wanted to say. You're using quality architecture and materials and preserving the trees, following good neighbor guidelines. You're not impacting anyone's view. And on the hillside, you're not changing the topography at all, so that is also very positive. And my motion.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Can I comment?
Yes.
Should there be a comment about the roof material?
Well, second has been made, so if you have a, yeah, go ahead.
Well, he's second, okay, then I hold my peace.
Well, after you second it, it's open for discussion.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't know if the motion should include someone comment on the roof material and color, because we did have an issue with it last time.
Would you like to amend
Well,
your motion?
I found your color board and your materials all
Okay.
acceptable.
Okay. All right.
Board Member Farrell, can you include whether you continue this to consent or full board?
Oh, I think this can go to consent for final.
Is that your motion?
That's my motion.
Thank you. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstains? Ayes have it.
Thank you.
Go forward.
Might I ask the board a short question?
Sure.
Karen would really like to have a standing seam roof. She was very disappointed that
Well, this is amazing.
that the board didn't support it last time. So I was just curious if that was a factor of a prior board, or if that's a policy of the city not to allow a standing seam roof.
I think a lot of us on the board feel that the standing seam is a very contemporary, kind of an edgy style roofing structure, and I think we're trying to maintain a very more coherent style for the neighborhoods. And what we've, in my experience and what I've seen, that's why there's 7 of us, because there's probably 3 on the board right now that'll completely disagree with me. But I found that they don't look very attractive in blending in with existing neighborhoods. Now, there are exceptions, and we have accepted them in certain situations where they're like ranchettes, and which a lot of open space. But when you have a series of homes, what I've noticed is that the standing seam is not a very compatible looking roof, and that's why we've kind of
And
done.
I think this compromise of the metal shingle roof is a nice compromise.
I think
and
this
I
is
think
gonna-
it's going to look really nice
I
with
think that's gorgeous.
everything else.
So,
Okay, thank you very much.
yeah, you're welcome. Yep. Okay. And this. This is, what's this? What is this? Oh, that's more of it, okay. So 565 Arroyo Avenue. Can you please come forward? Yeah, I did. Hi, if you could introduce yourselves and tell us what you, before you say anything, let's have Lisa give the minutes from our previous meeting.
All right, continued indefinitely with the following comments from our last meeting. We ask that you consider locating the deck further from the west property line to adhere with the 15-foot guideline.
Well, don't worry about this, just talk.
Okay. Provide an elevation with a more accurate rendering of the proposed gable and hip roofing. Explore aesthetic options for the window on the second floor north elevation on sheet A-3.1. Number 4, explore design options for the cantilevered roof over the second-story roof. Number 5, restudy options for the southeast corner of the first floor roof. Provide a more accurate rendering of the proposed design. Number 6, consider a different material for the fireplace chimney cap. Number 7, reduce the second floor plate height to 8 feet. 8, provide building sections showing the relationship between the proposed project and the westerly neighbors. 9, show exterior light fixtures. And 10, show correct materials in future renderings of the proposed project.
Thank you. So can you go through what you've done?
My name is Tarn Shea, and I'm here representing the owner, Clay Lovejoy.
Hi.
Sorry for my voice. We have gone back and taken a look at all of the recommendations by the board and have made subsequent revisions to them.
All right.
One thing that I did take away from the last meeting was that the structure further away to gain the fit for the 15-foot. Some of the board members, including yourself, mentioned that you might be open to a less than 15 feet if it also.
It's a recommendation,
would
yes.
What we did was we actually added a second-story bench, a built-in bench that would actually physically move any occupants further away from that wall. If we look on page 3.1, this is the existing neighbor to the west. Their driveway width is 11.3, and we're 10'9" to the property line. When we add in the new seating up on the deck, it's 13 feet 10 to the property line, and then if somebody's standing up there, you're about 14 feet 5 approximately your site view. The model rendering shows standing on what the existing roof is now, looking down, and how it, if we can go back real quick.
Sure.
How this is the existing view from the location. You can obviously see all of, the backyard, the driveway, and the entire house. Cuts down just about the entire house and only a portion of the existing window. We have gone back through and taken the board's advice and added, we've actually reduced the overall length of the roof overhang and added corbels, which actually is a nice detail, so thanks for the recommendation. When going back and revisiting the living room roof and the new entry covered roof, or the porch, I'm sorry, we did want to maintain this roof line and the ceiling line consistently from the front of the house to the back of the house. So we've changed the porch roof to just a simple shed and pulled it in away from the eastern wall of the house.
So that was
Correct. The original design, we tried to incorporate the window. We have gone back and changed it to be a little more consistent with some of the other windows on the house, and reducing the overall second story height to 8 feet helped with that issue that you guys have brought up.
okay. So yeah, we should quite a.
So initially, we were going to keep the same pitch of the roof and then just have a small ridge at this point. Now we basically have 2 shed roofs, one over the living room and kitchen, and then one over the porch.
Let's see.
Yes, we have added a housing on top. It's going to be metal painted the same color as the trim, and the renderings reflect that nicely as well. The renderings are just on the
Building section showing the relationship between the proposed project and the westerly neighbors.
We have a site section, and this is the existing neighbor house. This one reflects more clearly, though, the distances that are required on the elevation.
Show exterior light fixtures.
The exterior light fixtures are shown on the renderings again.
Okay.
But I do have
A cut sheet?
Cut sheet.
Right. Is this included on the plan somewhere?
No, it is not.
Okay.
So I'd like to.
Show correct materials and future renderings of proposed project. So,
That was an error in drafting,
okay,
and has subsequently been
rectified.
so. the roof was the same material on that elevation, and
Oh, okay.
so,
So is that your presentation?
yes.
All right, thank you. So I'll bring it back to the board. Did we get any public input or emails? Or?
No, we didn't.
Okay. Seeing there's no public input, I'll bring it back to the board. Does the board have any questions? Joe?
Right.
Sorry. Did you fill out a form? Okay, well, go ahead and speak first, but once you're done, please fill out a yellow slip, and then, yeah, we have 2 minutes to speak. Introduce your name,
Susan Felland.
and where do you live?
I live on the opposite side. How would you say it? I live on the street above him, and our backyards meet. And I wanted to know if you received a letter that I had brought here on August the 1st, stating my comments about a few of the parts of the plan, and I wanted to know if you ever received that. I handed it to a lady over the counter, and that was August 1st.
Did we receive a letter from her?
If not, I'd like to read it.
Go ahead, please.
Wow, all right. The purpose of this letter is to voice our concern as neighbors to Clay Lovejoy's proposals. His back property line meets our back property line. We front Miramonte Drive as we live on a slope. Our interests include our view and privacy, though we are aware that there are no regulations protecting either. We are asking the board to give thoughtful and serious consideration for positive and neighborly relationships. We have enjoyed living in our home for 43 years and hope to continue seeing the palm trees, ocean, and islands from our windows for years to come. For further consideration, we are asking the board to keep in mind our view and privacy when discussing Mr. Lovejoy's placement and size for the back wall window, the outside plantings, and the outdoor lighting. Thank you in advance.
Thank you.
Our property slopes down, and that's a yard which gives us some buffer from Mr. Lovejoy, but I was especially concerned about our privacy, meaning what his back is going to be window-wise, or to be sure that there is not going to be a continuation of the porch, which I understand is supposed to be on the front.
North elevation, where's the north elevation?
This would be the window that she's concerned with, and go to the
And there's only this one window that looks onto the
The
back
one
of your
window,
property.
all right. What about the lighting? Is there going to be outdoor lighting in back?
Well, the regulation is that you have to have a light
porch
fixture
light.
at each exit, and if we could possibly have her see that on the camera, the cut sheet that under your elbow, or the cut sheet, I'm sorry. So it's going to be a shaded, as to not allow any glare or bright light.
All right, all right.
So did she, did her 2 minutes come up?
That's all right. That's the main thing. Thank you.
Visit your neighbors for good neighbor policy.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question. Yeah. I'm looking at these plans. I'm looking at page A3.1. We're trying to figure out where. So I think that this is the window that she was concerned about, but all of these say proposed south elevation, proposed south elevation, proposed south elevation.
Oh.
And I'm trying to figure out which one is really south, which one is north.
Good eye.
Thank you, Jane.
That's north.
North.
That's
This
north.
is north down at the bottom.
This is south. This is east, and that's west.
Okay. And so then this one at the bottom is the west elevation? Bottom,
is the north.
bottom right is north, bottom left is west. Thank you, okay. Thank you, that helps me out here. So, because her backyard is, this window is the north facing, it's the backyard, okay. And the south is your entrance. So no deck back there, okay.
I think I have a question.
Yes.
I remember I made the comment, and Fred backed me up, I guess I might say, about what you were doing in this location. And the only thing we questioned about the fact that you, instead of, you had a flat vertical stucco area right here in this area because you tied these two roofs together. And maybe we led you astray. I didn't mind the look of tying the roofs together. We just wondered why you.
It was.
We were wondering why you didn't bring the high point of the roof up farther back so they both met in a hip right there instead of only meeting down here. They could have met the whole thing, and then the flat part, that vertical flat part, could have been part of this wing wall here. Understand what I'm trying to say?
Absolutely.
And now what you've done is you've taken, it's this roof, yeah. You've taken, this roof was the same, then you eliminated tying the roofs together. You put a different type of shed roof on it, which doesn't really fit what it looks like. And then now you have one plane that's all the way along there and all the way here. See, that's one plane. That whole thing right there is all one plane. And maybe we should have been.
I disagree with you on that, but
What's that?
I think it's a great solution.
Of just having this corny looking.
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't want to use that word, but I am using that word. That corny looking shed roof that covers the porch.
The biggest issue. The biggest issue with creating that hip, continuing the slope all the way back up, is that I would have to either cut off part of his view at his feet, or I would have to cut into the kitchen area with
May I have
the
your pencil?
framing.
Let me find out where we're at. We're at right here. So I don't see what you're talking about. All we'd end up with doing is when I should have been a little bit more specific. All you would end up doing is running this back like that, and that flat part, that vertical wall would be there in that thin wall, and this would slope down this, and this would slope right there, and you would stop it right at this wall or wherever the top of that is.
Right, but when it continues into the living room, it would actually have to notch out.
Oh, I see.
I would
So
have
this
to have
is
a
in the living room
slope
there,
inside.
and you wanted that open. You wanted
I
volume in there.
consistent volume all the way through without having to, create another.
Another angle up there in the ceiling.
It'd just be in the living room, and it would just be a little awkward. So I do understand the concern, but I have looked at.
I just question it. I don't object to it. I'm just questioning it, and I guess I do object to it because I take it back. I think this roof is not in keeping with any of the other houses around the whole area. I think it's just an added-on roof over a.
Well, the
porch.
existing house has just a simple shed as is. We're just extending.
Sorry, let me look. Hold it.
So we have just an existing shed roof which is smaller.
You took the fireplace and put it over here, and then you extended that whole porch all the way along there. And the existing roof is that thing that just sticks out there from the fascia of the extension out. Now the roof is all of this. Mm-hmm. This is a new balcony up here. Am I?
That's correct. That's the new.
That's the new balcony, and there's a new, what's it? New room underneath. Yeah, new room underneath. This is new.
That one's existing.
That was existing. All right, bear with me. That and that and that is not all on the same plane. This sticks out. No, for the roof.
No, the entry porch actually steps back. These are all on the same plane. The chimney was also proud of this entire wall. So the chimney was proud, and then the entry was recessed, but the rest of it's all one plane.
So the balcony now is sitting on top of this room.
Yes.
Oh, I'm almost finished then. Don't push me. Thank you. I don't, like I said, I don't think you've got just a roof that sticks out that supports, that covers covers the porch right there, and it comes from the fascia that's connected to the fascia and comes right out from the fascia, and now that doesn't come from the fascia, it comes from the wall. Tell me if I'm wrong.
You're on the wrong side of the house, aren't you?
No, that's
same thing. South elevation. South elevation.
Okay.
Now that wall just comes right out from that wall, which I'm trying to picture is all that, everything I'm circling is all the same plane. It's all on the same plane. All that's on the same plane. Anything I'm putting a mark is on the same plane. So this fits the contemporary of what is built up there, but this doesn't, because now it doesn't come from the fascia. It doesn't come from the fascia stuck out there because there's no fascia out there now. It just sticks out from the wall, and it goes the whole distance instead of just this part, which comes out from the fascia of the roof coming down. And you took that overhang away because you put a second story on it.
Well, but we also now have a trim board that it kind of has the same effect as...
Trim board, where's your trim board?
There's a trim board that runs along the base of the balcony.
Oh, I don't see it. Sorry, I don't see a trim board. I don't see a trim board there.
Let's see the elevation.
The picture's a lot easier to see.
There's the picture. Right here.
So it just kind of covers the whole front deck area. You have like a front porch now.
I think it looks attractive.
Me too.
I like it.
Well, we're all entitled to our opinions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Continue now?
Thank you.
Anyone else have any comments?
I think you have responded well to our request from the previous meeting, and I find it more supportable now.
Does anyone have any comments regarding the 15-foot setback where the balcony is? Anyone have any concerns, comments, and how he's done this? See any privacy issues? Because it does look down into this window.
Well, it only sees that part of the house if you've got your eye right on this wall right here.
You're not looking into their backyard or anything.
Well, you would be if you were standing out on the corner right there. If you were standing right here,
Yeah.
right next to the seat, where they're going to put a seat right. If you were standing right here and you looked back, you would see that same view.
Okay.
I mean, you've pushed your point. You're standing right here with your eye up against the side of the wall, looking out, and you obviously don't see past the wall because you've got 6 feet right there wall interrupting your view.
Okay. All right. Let's see. I think it's beautiful. I think you did a great job. I love the colors. I love the feel of it. I think it's it's a very pleasant looking home. I think it's going to actually be a big plus in the neighborhood. I think your approach to how now Joe's concerned about this. My comment is that this style of architecture is kind of reminiscent of what was happening in the old craftsman style, and they were boxes, and they had pop-out funky roofs all the time because they like to build boxes, and then if they added a roof, so you tend to not see a large swoopy roof. That was more something introduced, I'd say, more in the 70s, but I mean that was my opinion about that. So I think that's a great design approach.
If there was more room, there would be. But looking at this elevation right here, and it is just, in my opinion, is tucked up under that porch roof is tucked up underneath there. That doesn't even fit the rest of the house. When the rest of the house are full gables, full overhangs, and all of a sudden you have something that's just spinally. It just doesn't fit the rest of the house because it's tucked right up against right between the door and the balcony. It's tucked right in there, and it just doesn't fit. It looks very spinally. Doesn't sit on the ground as strong as the rest of the house.
Okay.
My opinion. And
Thank you.
With that being said, if there's no more comment, I just want to, the neighbor there, just a couple of things I want to say about your concerns. I feel, and anyone on the board can type in, on your north elevation, the window, there's a small window on the second story, which I think is very compatible with the style of the architect. I don't think it's going to affect your privacy. They could have designed something far more aggressive, and they didn't. I think it looks really nice. And as far as lighting goes, there is required a lighting on the porch, and he already displayed that it's this style. And I think one of the requirements is it has to be dark sky compliant, so it can't shine up as well. So there's that requirement, and it's opaque glass. It's not bright, shiny glass. So I think it's going to look really nice. Those are my comments. So with that, would someone like to make a motion? They're here for PDA, is that right?
I think I'd like to give this project design approval.
Okay.
I find the style is, I think it's compatible with the neighborhood. I think it's using quality architecture and materials. I don't have a problem with the covered porch area. I know that Joe thinks that the columns maybe are a little spindly. You could think about bulking those up a little bit possibly. But I think that the materials and colors of the house go very nice in this neighborhood. I think your choice of exterior lighting is also acceptable. I think that in this case, the deck being only 10 feet 9 inches from the property line is acceptable because it's adjacent to a neighbor's driveway and it's not looking down into their backyard. So I think that is acceptable with the Good Neighbor guidelines. I think that you might want to consider in that back window, you might want to do something like shutters that will allow light, but also give you and your neighbors privacy. Just something to consider. And the size, bulk, and scale is compatible with the neighborhood. And that's my motion.
Thank you.
Oh, do I need to do hillside lot? Okay. So because you are not doing any significant grading, that the topography is not going to change and impact the neighbors at all, so I think that that's acceptable. And the vegetation is all staying. You're not planning to change your landscape plan, so that's also acceptable.
Very good.
I'll second it.
All right, Jonathan seconds. All those, any other comments?
Can we include that, whether to continue to consent or full
Yes,
board?
I think this could go to consent. Doesn't need to come back to the full board. So continue it to consent.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you. And Jonathan, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Unopposed, and no abstains. I'm in favor, so we have 4 favors, 1 opposed. All right, thank you.
Whoops.
Thank you.
Do we have,
One more.
is the old ones right there? Is that the old, what we presented
Yeah.
before?
Yeah.
Let me look at that.
Uh, 1211 Delmar Avenue, if you'd like to come forward, please. We should have minutes for that. Looks like we have no new items. Hi. Hi.
You like it better?
Oh, yeah.
Going
All right, so
I like what they previously presented better.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
okay, Lisa, if you could give us the minutes from the previous meeting.
Yes, the minutes say, number 1, reduce the overall FAR from 89, oh no, I'm sorry.
Those are the minutes.
That was the motion. Okay.
No, that's correct. You're right.
Okay, well, we appreciated the reduction from 89 to 87% FAR. The removal of the 50 square feet of covered deck is appreciated. Number 3, the site section, landscape plan, and color board provided are appreciated. 4, consider reducing the size of the closet window on the face of the house. 5, consider reducing the size of the master bedroom windows, as Board Member Sweeney indicated in his sketch. 6, consider lowering the second-story plate height in order to reduce the mass. The landscape plan is sufficient, and the applicant is to consider using a king palm.
Well, thank you. So if you could introduce yourself and let us know what you've done regarding the minutes.
I'm Tim Gorm, I'm the owner.
Hi, Tim.
Kaz Seefeld, the architect.
Nicholas Tharp, landscape designer.
Welcome. So if you'd like to kind of explain what you've done.
Yes. Well, I'd like to back up. It's been a while since we've been here.
Okay.
So just real quick, this is a remodel and second-story addition on the Mesa, the Marine Terrace. It's an existing single-family home currently, so I can just do a little switch with a lot of deferred maintenance. The current single-car garage is in the front yard setback. What we're proposing to do is a new 2-car garage. Watch that cup. I don't want to knock it over. New 2-car garage outside of the current front yard setback. So adding another parking space, pulling this. So here's our existing single-car garage. We're doing a new curb cut new two-car garage, pulling that out. Second-story addition. Here, all hip roofs on the second-story addition to kind of break down that perceived massing from the street, pushing that second story back away from the front edge of the street to also help with the perceived mass of the building. We've made our changes and we're trying to come back to the board, but we learned that we had to do a modification because there's about 2 square feet of the building is in the side yard setback. So we went through that process and got approval through the show hearing. So this existing non-conforming condition can remain with our proposed addition. So now we are back, hoping to seek project design approval and final approval in one. So as you guys just noted, I wanted to circle back. So since we last were here, we did a reduction of the total FAR of the building. We reduced the covered deck, which is on the second story. We've also, in the process, gotten rid of another deck. And the notes here says, consider reducing the size of the closet window on the face of the house. So that would be the street elevation. So I'm going to turn to the elevations here. So in our old design, where's our street elevation? We had an equal size single light, and we are now proposing a smaller window in that master closet on the second story. Then I think the next one, consider reducing the size of the master bedroom windows, as Mr. Sweeney indicated. So these were the master bedroom windows. They were all the kind of same size, same sill as here. We've reduced the height and the width of those windows as well. The landscape plan was sufficient. There was some mention of the palm. We have our lighting plan. There's a simple downlight fixture here. LED, just minimal, located at the location of all the exterior doors. Generally, here's our material palette. It's a smooth integral color plaster. This was presented at the last meeting, so there's no changes to this. This comp shingle, wood clad, aluminum clad wood doors and windows. Trellis finish on the exterior and garage door finish, and then gutters, downspouts, and light fixture are all kind of this same color. I did bring a pretty picture for the board to look at from the street view.
Cool.
For help, so
nice.
We can turn it over to Nick to go through the landscape plan, but I believe it's mostly the same because it was considered.
Yeah, so there was no changes to the landscape plan other than adding a couple of rain barrels and disconnecting the downspouts so that we could take those to the landscape for infiltration. There was a comment about considering king palms, and we did consider the king palms for these locations in the back right here, Cass is pointing at. We did consider king palms, but after review, we felt the Kintia was more appropriate. King palms get awfully high, and if we're trying to help screen the view for the neighbor in the back, we felt that it was more to their advantage to have a lower canopy of the Kintia being 25 foot instead of the 40 to 60 foot for a mature king palm. And so we'd prefer to keep the Kintias instead of using the king palms.
In respect that in the last meeting, this neighbor Silas and his mother, I forget her name, showed up, and they had some concern about the potential view from their property and worked on that reasonable request. And we used to have a door here with a guardrail in front of it, and the door is opened inward. So now this elevation, we changed it to this window. Brought up the sill. They were just kind of concerned about the ability to see in all the way from kind of finished floor up to head height. So we heard that and made that adjustment to this rear elevation.
Is that your presentation?
That is the presentation.
Great, thank you.
Happy to take questions.
All right, now we have a couple public comments.
Move the rear deck then? So you just took that whole rear deck?
We have a covered deck that we
Right.
reduced. We used to originally have a
little-
deck off the master that
Right.
we've completely eliminated. That
Okay.
was brought up in the first design review. So since the first design review, we also lowered the second story plate height, which is one of the requests in our last meeting. I think it was the last one. It used to be 8 feet, now it's 7'6". So we've reduced the overall FAR, we've made the covered deck smaller, we've reduced the second story plate height, added the palm trees to the rear, changed this from a door to a window, and reduced all the second story windows that came up in our last design review hearing.
Great, thank you. So we have a couple public comment slips. If you'd like to come forward and speak. I have Richard Wolf, if you'd like to speak at the podium. Are you Elizabeth Brooks?
Yes.
All right. Okay. Pardon?
I'm seating.
Okay.
Neighbors to the west
So she's granting you her time, I see. So you have 4 minutes.
This, I don't know how you do this because other times we've sat here, but
Yeah.
if we can just do that in order, I'll.
All right. Oh, so this is, okay.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll go quickly. The proximity, of course, between the two houses, not so accurately represented there, but I think on the first photo after that one, I mean, I think it shows a little bit. It is a very close, very, very close to each other. And we're also at a lower elevation than they are, so the height of the new second-story wall will be accentuated by that our being lower than they are. And of course, once this is done, there's no going back. So that's what we've been at. This is the third meeting with you guys we've been to, and would like to just emphasize that we are concerned about our being canyonized. As you go to the next photo, number 3 shows a house to the west and how large it is. But there we have a 15-foot distance between our house and the fence. The next photo shows in the backyard, that house looking into our backyard. Again, canyonized. The house to the rear of us also, which I don't have a photo of, and this time I showed it to you last time, also looks into our backyard. We did take some shots around the neighborhood to look at some more accommodating designs perhaps, which move the top story further away from a single-story house. That one, of course, has an elevation. The house on the left has an elevation higher than whatever you call it, the base starting point is higher. But the next one is another single story next to one with actually is a higher elevation. And the third photo C there is actually the house on the other side of the 211 and the house that's been built there directly to the two houses to the east of the house at 211. And then in summary, the last sheet there has kind of the summary of the main points that we'd like to make as far as this is concerned. The adverse effect of the second story on us with we're worried about the view, the loss of view, the solar access, the houses to the east of us, the privacy and the general aesthetic, and the feeling that we're being canyonized. We'd like to make that clear. There is no going back from this, and while certainly large houses like the one to our west have been built over the course of time there, and in that neighborhood there are many large houses that overwhelm the property on which they're placed. We would really appreciate if you guys kind of act as a brake on some of this, and perhaps begin a process that would make. I think that's the purpose of your board, is to kind of rein in some of the out of control growth. We would suggest, although perhaps moving the second story further to the east, there is a little bit of room and still without adversely impacting the solar access of the house to the east. Again, they've minimized the window sizes, but maybe the number of windows could be reduced. I don't know if it's possible to further lower the second story, but basically we're looking to maximize our privacy or minimize the loss of privacy that we're facing in this regard. And the last thing I want to mention, the landscape between our houses has not been addressed. We talked about that's been talked about as far as to the rear of the property. But I do have concerns about how we are shielded from the second story and looking into our yard. I think that covers it.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Did we get any emails from the board? I'm going to bring it back to the board, and can you address whatever the neighbors' concerns are? Or?
Yeah, I think one thing that's helpful for the board for us to discuss again that was brought up in the first and second meeting is that if we look at, this is the structural plan, this is the existing footprint to here. We're maintaining this existing footprint, and it's a remodel, and we're trying to save cost. That's why we went through that modification process. So we're keeping this existing plate of the building here. And this room, the previous owner remodeled this area and vaulted this living room. So there's a big glulam, and there's a nice vaulted ceiling in here. The bathrooms over here, plumbing exists. So where we're creating new added square feet, the logical place in the site right here is where we're locating our second story. And we have stepped it in on the side almost 3 feet so we don't have one double balloon framed wall, double height. So there's a lot of logic in where the pieces of the puzzle ended up and how we're trying to rationally and reasonably go about this remodel without scraping it and redoing it.
Thank you. Okay. So where's the exterior elevations? So I'm going to bring it back to the board. And I also noticed you lowered the plate height, right?
Yeah, 6 inches from 8 feet to 7.6 for the second story.
So the second story is 7 foot 6 inches.
Yep.
Okay, got it. All right. So does anyone else have any questions?
I have a question.
Yes, Lisa.
Would you consider landscaping between the houses for privacy? There is no screening for anybody here.
We could consider something. I guess my question is that one of their concerns is, canyonizing, and anything that we put in there is going to be taller than the fence. So it's going to limit their it's going to increase the canyonization. Yeah, canyonization of it. If we put in a hedge or a tree or any large vegetation like that, it's going to increase that effect. So I don't exactly know what they're asking for there. You get what I'm saying? I mean, he's pushing the way that he's constructed the hipped roof, and he's pushed it back off the property line. Cass is trying to open that up as much as possible. If I put in a hedge or a large tree, that's going to be the opposite. So,
happy to explore those options.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I'd rather see some screen intermediary to looking at the wall.
Okay.
And on both sides, you do have room.
Yeah, we can explore those options if necessary.
Yes. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, you answered my questions. Okay, no questions. I'll go to comments. Any comments?
Well, I appreciate the fact that you have lowered your plate heights on the second story. I appreciate the fact that you took your neighbor's consideration and removed that deck that was going to look into the backyard of that house. I think that was very considerate and accommodating.
Jonathan?
Well, I just think moving the second story in from the edge of the house accomplishes an awful lot. That makes a lot of sense.
I'm blind. I like the project. Looks nice. It's low and it's.
Yeah, I'd say I understand the neighbors' concern and frustration, but I have to take it. Like you said, the whole neighborhood's transitioning, and whatever we do, we can't go back. And there's several particular points that this architect has made that we've requested that I think are really going to mitigate the issue of you being the canyonization, as you say. One of the primary ones is he lowered the second story plate height to 7'6". I also say the other thing is, where's that with all the neighborhood profiles? One of the things that our board looks to is size, bulk, and scale. And to me, this looks like a very nice fit. I don't see anything standing out or some kind of abrupt or rude introduction into an already established neighborhood. The style of the architecture is consistent with what's already established, so the architect's been very sensitive to that. So I can support this project. I think you've kind of done what we are requiring. We can't prevent someone from adding a second story. Not only that, there's already been second stories established in your neighborhood, so we're not setting a precedence. So I think in my looking at this as size, bulk, and scale, I think you've done a good job, and I think it'll fit in the neighborhood quite nicely. So with that being said, if someone would like to, let's see, you're here for final. Okay, so we have to, for final, you have to have details, right?
Oh, yeah.
Let's see your details.
Door and windows. Wall types, eave details, sill, trellis in the rear yard, waterproofing details.
Tier 1 or Tier 2?
Tier 1. That's why we have the rain barrels and disconnected downspouts. Just pretty simple, stucco, clad product, chimney cap.
And this is your color board?
Color board.
I like your garage door.
Thank you. Great.
Back.
You showed us our light fixture.
Yeah, it's that hooded fixture here.
Okay. So with that, would someone like to make a motion?
I will make a motion.
Okay.
The board would like to give this project, this thing is freaking me out, project
So that thing, not the box.
design approval and final, with following comments, that we approve of the modification for the non-conforming addition, the 2 feet that is encroaching, and that we appreciate that you have removed a deck from the rear portion of the building in consideration of your neighbors, and that you've reduced all the window sizes on the second story for the same reason, and lowered the plate height and adjust the plate height on the second story to 7'6", and have done all the list of questions that we requested from our last meeting. And we find that this project meets the neighborhood preservation ordinance in that it has consistency and appearance with the other homes in the neighborhood. It is compatible with the current neighborhood, uses quality architecture and materials, and it follows good neighbor guidelines. We feel that this is a good addition to the neighborhood as defined by the following streets. Did we make that definition?
No, go ahead.
What are you, the vicinity map?
Plan.
It's pretty small. We're between.
Oh, I can't see it.
Yeah,
It's too light.
Los Ondas and La Marina.
Los Ondas, La Marina, and Del Mar.
Okay.
Generally.
Is that your motion?
That is my motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion, comments? No discussion or comments? Put it on the floor. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Ayes have it. Now, there's one thing we kind of overlooked, that there was a couple comments that you made about the landscaping. Remember, on the sides? So we overlooked that. So what I would recommend, maybe discussing it with the neighbors and talking to them and seeing if you can work something out in terms of landscaping that you guys could work with and both be happy with. That'd be great. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And anything, that's it. Then
Yeah.
I will conclude the Single Family Design Board for November 11th. Thank you.
Thank you.